Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webcast, the Multifamily Energy Efficiency Programs. I am Lee Smith with Daikin US Corporation, and I will be the moderator for today's session. We'll start this webcast with a few housekeeping announcements and then quickly move on to our presenters, followed by Q&A if time allows. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you all of our sponsors and ally members for their support of the Energy Efficiency as a Resource Conference and ACEEE. Attendees are in listen-only mode. Please use the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen to ask questions of the presenters. As a moderator, I'll be sharing your questions with the presenters following the presentations if time allows. Otherwise, we will continue the Q&A in a Zoom chat/discussion after the session. Watch for the Zoom link to be posted in the chat during this session or download it from the resources section. Please refrain from using the chat for any dialogue other than asking questions. If there is an attendee you would like to connect with, please use the attendees link on the left-hand side column of the platform. All registrants are listed alphabetically. Also, on the left-hand side, you will find a resources section. Resources contain a copy of the program in a PDF format, an attendee list for downloading, Zoom links for all the discussions, and an evaluation form that we ask everyone to complete after they review their last session. Anyone who completes the evaluation and includes their name and a testimonial will receive a $25 discount to attend the 2023 National Conference on Energy Efficiency as a Resource in Philadelphia. All presentations will be available for on-demand viewing within a few days on this engagement hub. Presenters' PowerPoints can be found on their page in the program participants section. Before we start, can you all take the time to complete a brief poll on your screens? It should appear momentarily, so our speakers today can get an idea of who they are speaking to. And now, I would like to introduce our distinguished panel of speakers. They are Ms. Kate Tanabe from the American Council for Energy Efficiency Economy, Ms. Marissa Van Sant from TRC, and finally, Mr. Steve Hernandez from DNV. We will start with our first speaker, who is Kate from ACEEE, and Kate assists the ACEEE's local policy team with research and technical assistance and significantly contributes to the city scorecard. Her current work focuses on increasing energy efficiency in multifamily and affordable housing. And today, Kate will be talking about tackling missed savings opportunities in multifamily properties. With that, let me introduce Kate. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Steve. And thanks so much to everyone for joining. As Lee mentioned, I'm Kate Tanabe and I work with the local policy team here at ACEEE. Today, I'll be talking about some recent multifamily research, specifically discussing how multifamily programs are achieving high savings and encouraging more comprehensive energy upgrades. I'll start off with some background on the savings potential that's available in multifamily buildings, both on a national and regional level, and then some opportunities that programs can target in their own regions. And I'm also going to include a few descriptions of successful programs, but I'm hoping that this will set the stage for Marissa and Steve's presentations. So as some background, this presentation is based on work done as a part of a few ACEEE projects by myself and colleague Stefan. The first is a multifamily energy savings potential brief, and that included this analysis on the national and regional energy savings potential. The second is a more targeted look at some high impact utility multifamily programs and the ways in which they're targeting their own regional opportunities. So this presentation will touch on a bit of both reports, but I recommend checking them out as well. Great, so I'll start by going over some information on the energy savings potential work. So we found that nationally, multifamily households that are high users of energy could reduce energy consumption 17% and save almost $3 billion in energy costs by implementing energy efficiency upgrades. And I'll note that these numbers only reflect such upgrades in residential areas in multifamily properties, but still, I think we can see a large opportunity remains for energy and cost savings. And our analysis for this did not include common areas, but it's been shown that comprehensive multifamily retrofit programs improve the efficiency of the entire building. So we know that there's been several examples of whole building projects that have saved upwards of 20% in terms of energy use. We also broke down this kind of overall national savings potential by end use. And overall, we found that lighting, space heating, and water heating accounted for over 80% of the potential energy savings available in multifamily properties. And this was as of 2015. Air conditioning and appliances represented that remaining 20% of energy savings potential. And I think it's interesting to point out that these are some of the more common end uses that contribute to energy burdens, especially for low income, Hispanic, non-white multifamily households. And energy burdens being that percentage of household income spent on energy costs. So electric water heating is the highest for those groups that I just mentioned, followed by air conditioning, and lighting and electric space heating are also common factors as well. So implementing some of these more comprehensive upgrades can really address some energy burden problems. Great. As I mentioned, our analysis also identified the regional savings potential by multifamily end use across the US. So these high end uses can really differ across the country based on a number of factors like energy resource mix and climate, those types of factors. But we found that multifamily households in the Northeast were more likely to be high users of natural gas for space and water heating. In the South, multifamily residents were more likely to use large amounts of electricity for space heating, air conditioning, as well as water heating and lighting. And then multifamily households in the West and Midwest were a bit less likely to be high energy users, but as you can see, both regions still hold significant multifamily energy savings potential. So with these kind of regional opportunities identified, we wanted to understand how some programs, specifically utility multifamily programs, were already addressing these opportunities and reaching high savings. So moving on, I want to touch on some common key points about current utility offerings for multifamily properties. While we know that the number of multifamily energy efficiency programs has increased in recent years, they don't always achieve that high residential savings or address some of the high end uses for each of their regions. So this means that there's a pretty high saturation of multifamily programs, but they're often yielding relatively low savings. And that's because a lot of multifamily programs often focus mostly on direct installation measures or in-unit kits. So that might include measures like LEDs, shower heads, faucet areas, and things like that. And these are certainly beneficial for increasing engagement with building owners or providing some quicker, immediate, and less expensive savings, but they're not really resulting in that, deep energy reductions that are necessary. So on the flip side, quite a few multifamily programs do not provide incentives for those more extensive improvements, things like air sealing, upgrades to hot water equipment, HVAC, improved building controls, those types of measures. And as part of this research, we identified and profiled 4 utility multifamily programs that are capitalizing on these regional opportunities. And for this, those are PG&E in the West, Consumers Energy in the Midwest, Eversource, Massachusetts in the Northeast, and then Georgia Power in the South. And I'll go over a quick overview of each of the programs and the strategies that they're using, but I'll also note that you can find more information on the structures as well as data on savings, spending, and participation in that actual documents. So starting off with the Midwest, we identified Consumers Energy as a high impact program here. They are providing energy efficiency opportunities to their customers through the market rate and income eligible multifamily program. And through these programs, they offer no-cost energy assessment and direct installation measures, but they're also offering much more prescriptive and custom incentives for deeper energy savings. And those are for both common areas and tenant units. And so to help alleviate some of the financial burden that can kind of come with these more comprehensive upgrades, Consumers offers higher rebates for the more extensive work. Great. Moving on to the Northeast, we looked at Eversource, Massachusetts here, and the statewide offering called the Residential Coordinated Delivery Initiative. And I'll note that this program is administered through Mass Save, so it's in coordination with a number of the regional utilities, but we focused on Eversource for this specific example. So the goal of the initiative is to provide comprehensive whole building energy savings, but they do so in a streamlined approach that kind of creates greater flexibility for building owners and encouraging those deeper savings. While this program is also available for low-income single-family buildings, it uses a customizable approach for the multifamily properties, and that allows program administrators to really capitalize on the unique opportunities within multifamily buildings. Great. Next up is the South, and here we looked at Georgia Power's Home Improvement Program. This again serves single-family and multifamily residents in both market rate and affordable multifamily properties. The program offers two pathways, and that kind of helps provide more opportunities and also encourage those deeper retrofits. So the first pathway is the individual improvements approach, and that is for building owners who are interested in like some quicker, less extensive projects. But the second approach is the whole house approach, and that promotes a much more comprehensive strategy to reduce energy use. And so through that, participants earn more rebates by taking the whole house approach and are encouraged to kind of make those more comprehensive upgrades. And then the final program that we highlighted is PG&E's Multifamily Home Upgrade Program. And this one is currently not active, I believe, but I think is still a good case study. The program uses a few different strategies to encourage comprehensive upgrades and deeper savings. First, PG&E categorizes energy efficiency upgrades into 4 categories. And so those are HVAC, building envelope, hot water, and lighting and appliances. And then participants are required to select measures from at least 2 of those categories. So kind of spreading the wealth and letting not focusing as much on just the direct install measures. The second strategy that PG&E uses is providing performance-based incentives to encourage participants to really reach those higher energy-saving projects. So through that, the properties earn incentives, I think, for both assessments and implementing the upgrades. But for the installation incentives, properties earn a certain amount of money based on how much energy the project is expected to save. So I believe starting at 10%, properties earn $25 for each additional 1% of savings. And then once you reach a certain level, I think about 19 or 20%, the incentives ramp up a lot faster and you get more money. And that kind of encourages customers to pursue some of those more comprehensive measures and reach higher savings through more aggressive upgrades. So as I wrap up here, I'll go over some takeaways from looking at these 4 highlighted programs. Successful programs that I've covered here, they're reaching their targeted customers and achieving deep savings. So they're doing this in a few strategies. Some of them are pursuing one of these strategies and others use multiple. So these strategies they're addressing regional savings opportunities. So they're including measures in their offerings that will target those high-end uses based on their region. Second, they are encouraging comprehensive energy savings projects, so focusing on a variety of measures, not just the direct install opportunities. And the third is providing low-cost or free energy assessments to get their foot in the door, engage with building owners, managers, landlords, roles like that for the buildings. And then the last strategy that we've seen used in these successful programs is offering some type of incentive or higher incentive for projects that take on that whole building energy savings approach. So that could be a performance-based incentive like PG&E or higher rebates like Georgia Power. But either way, rewarding customers for taking on that more aggressive route. And that wraps up my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions at the end. Feel free to reach out or take a look at the rest of ACEEE's multifamily resources.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Very good presentation. So our next speaker today is Marissa Van Sant. Marissa is a senior project manager at TRC with more than 10 years experience in federal, state, and local environmental policy, planning, and sustainability program management. She has worked across the environmental and energy sectors with key decision makers to implement waste diversion, energy efficiency, and sustainable energy strategies and policies. Today, Kate will take a look at, or the deeper dive into PG&E's low-income multifamily energy efficiency program, and with a big focus on energy savings assistance in common areas and the measures accordingly. So with that, I'll pass it over to Marissa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lee, and hello, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Marissa Van Sant with TRC, and it's a pleasure to be here virtually with you all today. Thanks all for taking the opportunity to fill out the polls that were presented at the beginning. I'll give you a quick breakdown of the results. Looks like we have 28% of folks in the audience that identify under government, 28% that identify under nonprofit, and 43% that identify as consultant. We don't have any architects, engineers, contractors, or multifamily property owners in the audience. But if you also engage with those stakeholders, hopefully this information will be useful. And then also you all noted that 33% of you have participated in energy efficiency upgrades at multifamily properties, and roughly 68% have not. So hopefully this information will allow you to take some action after today. So I'll be providing an overview of PG&E's ESA Common Areas program, an energy efficiency incentive program that specifically serves deed-restricted multifamily properties, and highlighting a few ways it adapted to the needs of the market during the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, I'm with TRC, and for those of you who are not familiar, TRC is a leading global consulting, energy, and construction management firm that provides environmentally focused and digitally powered solutions across key markets. I work in TRC's Advanced Energy Division that has a long history of engagement in the affordable housing community and experience implementing multifamily energy efficiency programs such as PG&E's ESA Common Area Measures program and the multifamily upgrade program that Kate just mentioned in her presentation earlier. Continuing with introductions, we like to mention a key stakeholder in investor-owned utility energy efficiency programs, and that is the California Public Utilities Commission, or the CPUC. This program is funded by California utility customers and administered by PG&E under the auspices of the CPUC. The theme of my talk today is resiliency. Many of us in the sustainable energy field are focused on this topic, and as I'll share in just a moment, energy efficiency is a key component of the grid resiliency equation. However, the term resiliency also relates to how we all as individuals and teams have adapted to the new normals over the last 19 months as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Today's story is going to be one of how a program adapted to the needs of hundreds of multifamily property owners, contractors, and customers that enabled them to continue to achieve major energy efficiency retrofits in spite of the pandemic's challenges. First, to define grid resiliency, the North American Electric Reliability Corp, or NERC, defines resiliency as a combination of sufficient resources to meet demand or adequacy and the ability to withstand disturbances or security. A lot of those topics that Kate actually just touched on relate to both adequacy and security as it relates to energy efficiency and multifamily properties. So really, more simply, in practice, resiliency is the harmony of some of the key advanced energy disciplines that you see here, of which energy efficiency is one of the most, if not the most critical, because we must continue to implement strategies that reduce energy usage in our existing buildings in order to truly make an impact on the grid. As likely a lot of us here today know, energy efficiency is a bottom-up approach that is achieved by reducing the load of a building as low as it can go with efficient systems and improved building design. But the success of energy efficiency also relies on the people or the occupants knowing how to use energy and the systems that have been installed. Programs like the ones that you're hearing about today are designed to both provide incentives to help multifamily property owners achieve these upgrades, but also offer additional technical assistance, education, and other softer services to serve holistically upgrade buildings and also empower building owners and the project teams to walk away from upgrades with longstanding benefits that go beyond the bottom line. So now we're going to drill down a little further and look at how energy efficiency and its resiliency principles benefit the grid, multifamily property owners, and people in general. So first, energy efficiency benefits to the grid include reductions in energy use by buildings that have energy efficiency improvements while still meeting the demand. So it sort of speaks to the consumption reduction goal that Kate was speaking to earlier. Energy efficiency for the grid also reduces the need for power plants to produce high-cost electricity during periods of peak demand. And energy efficiency is the most cost-effective method compared to advanced grid investments such as new supply resources. Energy efficiency benefits multifamily property owners by lowering operational and maintenance costs, which then allows them to defer or reinvest, I should say, those costs into other capital projects. And it also provides safer living conditions for tenants. We also hear feedback from property owners following upgrades. The tenants feel happier and healthy in these spaces that have been improved. And then lastly, how energy efficiency benefits people is that it lowers energy costs, which also helps to reduce energy insecurity, specifically for the customers that PG&E's a common area measures program engages with. Reducing energy insecurity is certainly a benefit that helps individuals realize the impacts and benefits of energy efficiency. Specifically, energy efficiency can also improve HVAC reliability during periods of extreme weather. And in California, obviously, we are making the news every year with increasing wildfires and poor air quality that put people and vulnerable communities at further risk. So improved building resiliency can provide people with safe harbors during these events while lessening the strain on the grid, particularly during periods of high demand. Okay, so now we've laid the groundwork with resiliency and energy efficiency. So now we'll dive into PG&E's Common Area Measures program. PG&E's Common Area Measures program, or ESACAM, as it's commonly referred to, is a $25 million energy efficiency incentive and technical assistance program that serves income-eligible, deed-restricted multifamily property owners. It's administered by PG&E. TRC is the third-party program implementer, and ESACAM has implemented 2 program cycles to date, and we are on the verge of implementing its third in 2022. ESACAM offers eligible properties incentives covering up to 100% of the project cost for qualified EE retrofits. Upgrades are to be performed in common areas or central systems. No cost technical assistance and education is a part of the offerings of the program, and it also provides an open contractor network. To date, some of our progress have been that over 122 properties have been served, and projects have been paid out over $8.6 million in incentives. Over 200 projects are currently enrolled in the program, and we are monitoring an active waitlist. To date, some of our energy savings that we've seen are here on the screen. 86 kW saved, over 4.9 million kWh and 43,000 therms. So hopefully that is adding to the energy efficiency savings potential evaluation metrics that Kate and others are evaluating. And we are really excited to be seeing these savings realized. A visual of the breadth of ESACAM is here, where you can see the scatter of ESACAM projects throughout PG&E's service area, which is a 70,000 square mile territory throughout California. The general requirements of ESACAM are that properties must receive PG&E service, work must be performed by licensed contractors, benchmarking is a requirement prior to retrofits being performed. And we also coordinate with another ESA program that serves energy efficiency retrofits inside tenant units. Each property must be an existing building with 5 or more attached dwelling units, and it can be low or high rise. Each property must be deed restricted, which means it must be held to long-term affordability by local, state, or a federal agency. And then the income eligibility requirements are that a minimum of 2/3 of residents must meet ESA income requirements, which is 200% of the federal poverty level. Here's a visual of what we consider common areas in this program. So here, just examples of the types of building spaces and systems that can be upgraded as a part of this program. We have eligible measures across lighting, heating and cooling, water heating, building envelope, and appliances and plug loads. And this measure list in particular can be found at esacommonarea.com under our resources page. The ESACAM process, or what we call the project lifecycle, is from start to finish, from qualification to payment. So as I described earlier, during the eligibility requirements, we start with identifying whether or not the property itself meets all of the requirements of the program through a qualification period. And then we begin to assess the property itself for the common area upgrade potential. We then, through a series of steps to identify those eligible measures, will then work with the property to develop a scope of work and then officially approve the project, which then reserves an incentive, which will then be paid out upon construction completion. So once that project has that green light, it's when construction begins. And then when it completes, there's a verification period that comprises both document and inspections that are reviewed in order to ensure that the installation meets all the standards of the program and then is paid out accordingly. But here on the screen, again, kind of going back to the theme of this talk today, is how the program adapted to the challenges of COVID. And in March 2020, like many other programs were impacted, it was essentially all of our field-based work, from the assessment through the bidding of project work through construction, that were immediately impacted by COVID. So how we adapted to these challenges is immediately we just started to track both jurisdictional and property restrictions so that we could understand really where the program itself was being held up by the pandemic. So we analyzed a lot of that jurisdictional data, as well as understood where properties were as far as allowing on-site activity, and then worked with PG&E to redesign or adapt the policies and procedures of the program to ensure we had minimal project loss purely due to the program's design. So what we did specifically is we extended the program and the construction deadline, which allowed all projects the time in order to assess what the new realities were that we were all experiencing in early 2020. And in order to ensure that projects had cash flow during this time, we revised our phase payment policy that allowed projects to be able to receive incremental payments as project scopes of work were completing, in order to have less of a financial burden during the COVID-19 pandemic, when, for instance, properties needed to be more resilient with increased hygiene and cleaning procedures that are were being implemented in order to protect residents. And then lastly, obviously a big impact was how do we assess the sites in order to identify the potential scope of work. That was all done through an in-person energy audit. We then pivoted to standing up that process through a virtual assessment. And then we were able to continue conducting and screening properties for common area upgrade potential virtually instead of in person. Here is now a kind of breakdown of our no-cost technical assistance in the program. It begins during the eligibility evaluation phase when project teams and property owners engage with our staff to go through the general requirements and ensure that a property meets the program standards. And then at that time, a project or a property is assigned a case manager. So an ESACAM case manager is tied to the program from the very beginning all the way through to the very end to ensure that that property's experience is as smooth as possible. We begin with on-site or virtual energy audit, as I mentioned, and then that audit will produce a report with the scope of work recommendations. At that same time, we're also conducting benchmarking during Energy Star Portfolio Manager and provide a report to the property so that they understand where their energy consumption is prior to retrofit. Then the property and the project team take the information that we give them and then provide bids for evaluation and scope of work development to the ESACAM team. We then evaluate those bids and approve a final scope of work with an incentive reservation. We also utilize that opportunity to look at other potential programs that might be of benefit to that property or to the scope of work that's being designed. We call this program layering, and I'll touch on this in a moment, but that's also another part of our no-cost technical assistance that's done at this time. Once the project is then under construction, our team provides construction monitoring support, which then just facilitates the project through the process as best as possible to ensure that there are no slowdowns or hiccups during construction. And if those are experienced, our team is there then to help support the project. Then lastly, once construction is completed, our team verifies the scope of work and all of the installations, goes out to the site to inspect them, and then provides payment once everything meets our standards. The program timeline that was initially impacted by COVID was the 2018 to 2020 program cycle. As you can see here, really the takeaway is how the program adapted again to the situation. Initially, the original construction deadline for the program was October 1st of 2020. We then extended that deadline to July 1st of 2021. But then as the continued experience of the pandemic had impact on procurement and supply chain, we then pushed that deadline out to September 1st of this year, which was met by all projects in the pipeline. And we are very excited to have seen that result. The September 30th was the deadline for projects to submit their verification materials, and now they are all undergoing that step in order to receive payment, and we will officially be closing this program cycle at the end of this year. We are also implementing a program cycle now called the 2021 Bridge Period that began in March of this year and will continue through 2022, as you can see. And then we will also be launching a third and final program cycle in 2022 here soon. If you're interested in getting on ESACAM's waitlist or receiving more information about future program cycles, all new inquiries should be submitted through our website. So please follow this link here and submit an interest form, and then also subscribe to our newsletter that is released quarterly. As I mentioned, program layering is a feature of ESACAM, and it offers the participant the opportunity to layer with other utility programs to maximize incentive opportunities. One of the automatic programs that each property is layered with, as I mentioned, is ESA In-Unit, which provides upgrades directly to residents. It is an offer as a part of your ESACAM participation, and here's a list of some of the measures that are available. Through ESACAM's engagement, customers are also connected with PG&E's single point of contact, which assists multifamily customers by identifying current programs and financing offerings for energy efficiency upgrades and construction. And here's just a short summary of the resources that are offered through the single point of contact. And we are ensuring that single point of contact touches the project both at the beginning as well as the end in order to understand what additional program opportunities may be available. And that's it for today. Thank you for the time. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me here. I also look forward to any in the Q&A session. Lee, back over to you.
Thank you, Marissa, and thanks for the very helpful information for our participants who have business interests in California. So now we will hear from Steve Hernandez. Steve is a mechanical engineer with a broad range of product evaluation and management experience. He began his career as an energy consultant for the state of New Mexico and has managed capital projects at a power plant, higher education, state, and several other facilities. He has experience in facility engineering, construction, and management. For the past 12 years, Steve has served as a senior energy and operations manager for DNV's commercial and industrial utility rebate program for the Public Service Company of New Mexico. Steve will explore engaging multifamily communities in energy efficiency programs. So with that, Steve, over to you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think a lot of my presentation is going to be sort of just a follow-up of the previous two of what Kate and Marissa had to say. So I think we're all running into the same issues. I certainly noticed how Marissa had a boxed out section for COVID-19 and how they've had to amend their program. We're no different, and I'm sure programs around the country are the same. So a little bit about our programs. We are the PNM Business Energy Efficiency Program based in Albuquerque, and I'm also presenting on behalf of our Phoenix office, which is the Arizona Public Service, or APS, Business Efficiency Programs. We've both run those programs our offices run those programs for about 10 years, probably a little bit more, but we're very new into the multifamily market. So we just began those programs about a year and a half ago in both Albuquerque and in Phoenix. And while some of you may think there's probably a lot of commonality, there's actually quite a few stark differences too, and mostly having to do with weather. But I'll go over a few of those items that we've both run into and some of the hurdles we've come across and how we're trying to jump over some of those hurdles. I did notice in the chat, it looked like about roughly half of the folks in the audience are consultants of some type. And it looks like 2/3 more or less are currently doing projects. So I think like Marissa said, one of our biggest keys is bundling projects. And if you have perhaps a common area along with an end unit or some other type project like that, maybe a custom with a prescriptive, all of our programs are certainly hoping that you engage in as many of those as possible. Again, one of the hurdles you come across with rebates for multifamily properties is that there aren't a lot of hours in your state TRMs, your technical resource manual. So for example, in New Mexico, we're given about 800 hours of full load equivalent lighting and maybe about 1,100 of cooling. In Arizona, fortunately, they get a lot more cooling, and they're up around 5,000 hours full load equivalent for cooling. But again, the still same about 800 hours for lighting. So it can be a very expensive program for your utilities. And so maybe giving 8 cents or 10 cents or 6 cents or whatever your rebate might be in your area, it may not seem like a lot. It's still relatively expensive compared to, say, a commercial and industrial, where your equivalent full load hours are in the thousands, maybe 3 or 4 times higher than in a multifamily. So there's some pretty significant differences. And our program actually pays around 20 cents per kilowatt hour, and APS pays about 15 cents. Again, and those are almost double, if not more than double, what we pay for our other programs. So it's rather limited at the same time. Again, these programs have to be cost effective for the utilities to report to their public utility commissions. All right, so what are some of who do we define multifamily as? So again, we're no different. A multifamily can be a mix of residential and commercial spaces, and I think maybe a lot of you guys have seen probably quite recently, mostly infill projects. We see where you have a commercial or commercial spaces on one level and then maybe multifamily residential above those. So we have found that quite common, maybe in an economically disadvantaged area, where rather than just trying to build a large apartment complex and then maybe a strip mall, they combine the two. And maybe on the lower levels, you have a grocery store and maybe a restaurant or two, maybe some drugstore or even a barbershop or something of the sort. And that's really become quite prevalent in the Southwest. And we've seen roughly a third to a half of our projects encompass some sort of mixed use facility. So it's not just the 300 door resident. It could be anybody. It could be, we actually allow anything from a fourplex and above. I noticed PG&E in their program, they have they said 5 and above. So we're almost identical. We allow 4 and above. And we really try and reach out and touch those even small units too. Who else is multifamily? It's a regional property manager. So again, they're an ownership group, might be 3 or 4 states away. It may be on a different coast from where you're working. But they all tend to have a regional project manager or property manager. And so maybe, for example, in our area, we could have somebody in Santa Fe and Albuquerque, and in Phoenix, you would have somebody in the surrounding areas, but they might manage multiple properties. And so they're part of our multifamily areas we're trying to touch. Local facility teams, sometimes an apartment complex will have its own facility management team, or sometimes they'll share. And so those are the kind of multifamily opportunities we want to reach. And lastly, of course, individual residents. So again, you can imagine it's hard for a resident in maybe a 300 door unit to try and come up with an idea for efficiency, and they have to work with the apartment they're working with, as well as the manager, as well as the ownership group. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But it's something that also, they're not going to install brand X of something in one apartment and let 299 be different. They want to have some sort of consistency across all of their different units. All right, so here's some of the hurdles that we've seen. Again, I probably should have put a slide in here or snuck a slide in about COVID, but anyways, I think we've kind of beat that one to death. But so who wants or needs energy efficiency, and who decides how to purchase it? Who decides, if it's cost effective, or it matches the decor, or if it is the time for an apartment to upgrade? Who decides that? What parts of my program can serve their needs? So again, we've talked about this a lot already, is that do we have a new construction, or do we have a common area, or maybe even a direct install portion of the program that can touch your apartment complex? And lastly, and this is by far the most difficult that we've come across, is how to engage trade allies. Again, no different from what you're hearing in the news these days. Quite a few of our trade allies are experiencing labor shortages. The ability to have enough folks to quickly go in and service a large apartment complex with maybe 180, 200 doors. Think of the manpower that's requiring these days to go in. You probably want 2 people in there, just so, for your sake, your safety and security. That it's very difficult these days to have that kind of manpower, and that's one thing that we've seen a huge drop off in, is sort of, I guess we could call it the super low hanging fruit, or the onesie twosie stuff where you're screwing in light bulbs. Trade allies have almost completely abandoned ship on that particular efficiency measure. All right, so who needs efficiency? Believe it or not, we found most of our complaints or our reason to have energy efficiency is because of complaints. So it's either a high bill complaint, and again, this should shock most of you. For example, we have apartment complexes that have heat pumps, and in New Mexico, an air-to-air heat pump is not a great idea. And we were working with one apartment complex in particular that residents were seeing January and February bills above $500 and well into the $700 range just for their electric bill. That was a huge idea for them to come to us for some sort of resolution. Poor lighting conditions is one. Obviously, everybody is very high on security these days. And we have found, for example, that there might be stairwells or something that may be controlled by an individual resident. Maybe they own the light bulb on their door that shines down that stairwell. Well, we found that if we can disconnect the ability of that person to switch off that light and put something high efficiency in there, it makes a huge difference in the safety and security. And obviously, it reduces their liability if there were to be an accident. Uncomfortable indoor environments, we haven't seen a lot of that, but surely that is something that individual residents bring to us. Promoting sustainability is something that, again, more on a high level, maybe even on an ownership group, they want to sort of advertise themselves as, well, we have marble countertops and we're promoting sustainability. And then local control. So in fact, we're installing thermostats in a few projects now that do have a demand response capability with them. And what we found is that the utility is asking us to opt them in to the program, to their demand response program, and leaving a brochure with the customer to see if they want to opt out. So they'll immediately get the free thermostat. They'll get the rebate associated with a demand response, and then they'll get a brochure to say, here's how it works. And in the small print on the bottom, it'll say, should you decide to opt out. So rather than having us go in and try and sign up 100 or 200 or 300 customers in one fell swoop, one at a time, we sign them up as they're being installed. And again, if they decide that they do not want to participate in a demand response program, then they can opt out. But it gives the utility that immediate ability to be able to add not only a kilowatt hour savings, but a kW savings to their portfolios. All right, purchasing authority. Again, this has been something that things should just be spinning around and around. Sure, a tenant might start something. They may complain about lighting in the common area. They may be complaining about the lighting in their individual unit. They go to the landlord. The landlord then goes to a local or regional property managers who go to the owner and make that decision. So one of the most difficult things we found is to actually be trying to help that individual tenant with something that could be something very simple, as it may have to go through 2 or 3 different levels of approvals. Fortunately, we have found too that once you can connect with a regional property manager or an owner, they are the ones who are now typically giving us the leads back down. So that arrow is spinning the other way in some cases, that if they can make their units more energy efficient and they can attract different tenants or more tenants, obviously that's not a huge issue at this time, because I think the entirety of the Southwest is sort of on a building boom for multifamily. I don't think they're having trouble attracting. At some point, they realize it is going to become important. Let's see. So, what parts of my program? So here we're talking about bundling. So I'm going to start at the end here with new construction, and I'm not sure what the case may be in your area, but what we're finding in new construction, and again, I keep talking about a building boom in the Southwest. We have found that an unusual number of apartment complexes have decided to go all electric. And I wish I could say it had everything to do with efficiency, but it doesn't. A lot of it has to do with liability. And what we found is that more and more people are telling us, look, I do not want to run a 3-inch or a 4-inch gas pipe up and down this building and feed it off into 200 different apartments and have 200 different meters set and potentially 200 different people complaining about a carbon monoxide or some sort of issue with a water heater. And so what they're doing is they're installing all electric. And again, I know that might seem a little counterintuitive, especially in a climate like New Mexico, where we have actually probably 3 times as many heating degree days as we have cooling degree days. But they're installing high efficiency heat pump units, and they are coupling it with water heaters. And of course, the remainder, everything else in there, the stove, the dishwasher, everything else becomes all electric. And it does give them the ability to do some demand response with us if they care to, but we're finding that it's a much more common new construction method these days is to go all electric. Again, I personally never thought I'd see such a day, but it seems to be pretty common. So speaking of common area stuff, pools are obviously and fitness areas. Somebody could potentially go into the fitness area, at 3 a.m. They're open 24 hours. So what measures can you do? Those do have tend to have good paybacks because they operate obviously many more hours per year than an in-unit. So again, the in-unit, we talk mostly about lighting. We're seeing more HVAC and AC tune-up come in to play. Again, lighting is still obviously the lowest hanging fruit, even though it has a relatively short equivalent full load hour. But what we're also seeing is that they're getting away, apartment units are getting away from just that screw in. The kit everybody talked about, I don't remember if Kate or Marissa brought that up, but everybody remembers the box where you would walk into an apartment and it had 2 light bulbs and a low flow shower head or something like that in it. They want to go more to a fixture because a fixture is just more energy efficient. You're going to get more lumens per watt. The light bulbs aren't going to walk away at certain times. That we have found that if we can offer a solution and we try to with a better rebate for actually installing fixtures, because we know those fixtures are going to get screwed in and stay there for a minimum of 10, maybe 20 years before they have to get changed out. And again, appliances, that's something that we haven't seen a lot of in our area. Again, a washing machine and a dryer, they may have 50 to 100 kilowatt hours a year. If you replace an old one with an Energy Star unit, just terrible paybacks considering that the first cost is going to be upwards of $500, anywhere from $500 to $1,000 for something like that. So not a lot of appliances at this point. I put that on there more as maybe you want to consider that in a new construction application. And then smart thermostats, obviously, I already talked about. All right, so how do we engage trade allies? Boy, to talk about the toughest nut to crack, this is super difficult, we have found. What we're trying to find now to actually find trade allies is maybe find those contractors who have a preferred contractor already for a large unit. So I could go to, a large plumbing and electric supply or electric contractor who may be able to work on several and not know that they had the ability to be a trade ally and didn't know they had ability to get rebates. So our recommendation, train your TAs to bundle those and see if you can't find those trade allies to educate them to see if maybe there's somebody out there who's doing work. Maybe they're doing roofing work, but they would be super interested in doing other envelope measures like windows that potentially have a rebate. And I'm going to go a little quicker here because I know I'm running out of time. I'll be really quick with my next 2 slides. So overcoming hurdles. Sorry, I'm on two screens now. Partner with construction companies. That's very true. There's a lot of construction companies out there, believe it or not, that do only multifamily construction. And we've been fortunate enough to find those in our areas and partner with remodeling firms. And I will quickly go to my last slide. And that is, oh goodness, here we go. 5 tips. So I'll leave you with these. But again, pair residential offerings with common area, explore ways to bring multifamily limited income, use trade allies, incorporate safety elements that I talked about before, and utilize the construction boom in your area if you're experiencing that, to work with those architects, engineers, and builders. And I'm sorry, I hope I didn't go over time. And that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. That was very, very practical advice based on your experience in your market. We did actually receive a few questions during the presentations today, but given the time, I'd like to firstly thank you to all of our speakers for their presentations today, and to the attendees for participating in today's webcast. If you can follow us to the Zoom chat, we can continue to go through the questions and answers, questions that we received, and it will give everybody an opportunity to ask additional questions that they have. The link for the Zoom meeting is in the chat, so please click away and hopefully we will see you there. Thank you.